everybody, and welcome to another booktube video on this channel. Last one I made was a little over 2 months ago, so I wanted to still make more videos. Thank you everybody for your response in the last video. I loved reading some of the comments, and I got a shout out from Daniel Green. Well, not a shout out, but I got a comment from Daniel Green. Very nice, very nice. Today, we're in the exact same set as last time. Absolutely nothing has changed. As you can see, the bookshelf is still behind me, and my computer monitors have not changed at all. Today we're going to be doing a book review of You by Caroline Kepnes. I don't know how to say the last name, I'll just say Caroline. Mrs. Kepnes. I've drawn the book right here. True artist. Of course, this book, most people will know it from the show, which I'm going to be discussing in this review, but after season 2 came out, I decided I wanted to read the book from the first season before I started season 2, so I can get a little bit into it. This review is going to be split up into 4 sections: emotions, how it relates to the show, some notes about the book structure, and then just notes about everything that I have at the end. And then, 5th part is the actual rating and why. So let's just jump right into it. How does this book make me feel while I'm reading it? That's really what I want to answer in this section. So let's start off with what it doesn't make me feel. I don't really attach onto Jo and Beck. As a reader, you're always stuck in Jo's head, but you're attached just to Beck, really. Because you want her to get through this, you want her to escape Jo, but you're sort of in a weird position because you're stuck in Jo's head, so you have to follow him. And if his point of view in the story ends, then the whole book ends. So what's really the point? But I never really feel like I latch onto their relationship. Not to say that we hate Jo. That's really what I think is the biggest appeal of this book, is that Jo is such a twisted and messed up guy, but you still really latch onto him and you really still are interested by him. And you want to keep reading in his point of view. As the reader, you sort of mimic Jo's obsession, because that's the only way we know Beck. We don't know Beck through any other lens except this obsessed and very sexual and very aggressive brain, which is Jo's point of view. Jo never really loved Beck. It was always an infatuation. He had these little things that he kept saying that he was sort of proving to himself that he loved Beck. He was like, yeah, I love her taste in books, I love her personality, I love all those kinds of things. But whenever it really came down to it, really emotional moments, all he really felt for her was that he wanted to have sex with her. All these things were really just excuses of his real emotions. And he never really failed to hone this in every time they had sex. It was like that was his main objective. And he was winning. He was getting what he wanted, and he said they were complete like that. The only real likable characters in the book are Jo and Beck, until the end when it's just Jo. Once Beck realizes what Jo's been doing, and she's locked in the cage, we sort of as a reader end up turning on her. At least I felt like that I started disliking her because this whole time we're stuck in Jo's mind, and now all of a sudden Jo hates her. Well, I don't know if he hates her, because he never really loved her, but he wants to deal with her. All the killing scenes in this book really were kind of strange, and I felt they were strange, and they were really just emotionless. And I feel like that was something that could have been done on purpose. I feel like it does represent something in his character. Benji's abduction and killing really just felt like it happened so fast and so randomly. I understand why he did it, but it really didn't feel like he took any contemplation or any planning on his part. He just knew exactly how he was going to do it. He had the whole thing planned out, and maybe he did. But I feel like that could have been more explicitly shown that he really thought this through already, how he would abduct someone. The only killing scene that really struck a chord was Beck's killing scene. And I love the way that Jo's anger comes out and his emotions really come out in that scene, which might show that he really did have some sort of feelings for Beck. In that scene, his emotions go so fast. At one point, he's saying, like, you have to apologize for this, you're the problem, you have to die, I'm choking you because I want to kill you, right? And then in an instant, it turns into, I'm sorry, I'm the bad guy. And there's no self-reflection on that on his part, which I don't think is needed. I don't think he would do that as a character. And I really love the way that came out. It came out really genuinely. That scene really was such a huge contrast between all the other killing scenes. There was so much emotion packed into this, and so much detailed emotion, compared to the other ones where it just felt like nothing. Because this was different for him. It was different killing Beck. And maybe he didn't mean it, maybe his emotions really took control of him there. The part with Dr. Nikki, and when Jo finds out that Beck was sleeping with Dr. Nikki, I really liked the way that turned out in the book. It really came off really dirty and tainted, and that's how Beck felt. And that's what that relationship really was, and that came out really well. You feel bad for Jo in that moment because he was really trying to be like a stand-up guy, and it really backfired on him. Okay, now part 2, this is how it relates to the show. And if there's only one thing you take away from this review, it's that the show did it better. I think that the Netflix show had so much more interesting, detailed plot fit into it. I think that it did a much more intense representation of Jo, because Even though we have the voiceovers of him in our heads in the show, we're looking at him, right? We're not in his point of view. In this whole book, we're in his point of view. And we sort of see him as us. In the book, we're really in his head more. And in the show, we're still in his head. Not to say that that's the whole point, that's the whole way they're doing it, but from a different perspective still. In the show, he's so much creepier, so much more disgusting, and maybe that had to be done because it's different watching 10 episodes of show than reading a 400-page book. You have to have some sort of likability in the character, and if he was so disgusting, maybe that wouldn't be enough likability, but I don't know. In the show, you never really root for them at all. I don't think. Now, I already watched season 1 of the show, so I was really the whole time comparing it to season 1 while I was reading the book. Maybe that took away from the reading experience. I still enjoyed the book. I really did. Certain parts I was kind of waiting for things to happen like what had happened in the show, but it didn't come. In the show, there's that whole section with the neighbors and how there's the neighbors and the son who, I forget exactly, but he kills the dad, and that completely was absent in the book. There was no neighbor. They never mentioned a neighbor. I mean, maybe a little thing here and there, but nothing. Also, the pacing in the show, I feel like was done very well. Pacing in terms of the whole story arc, but also pacing in terms of scene by scene. I feel like she did it well in the books, and they really nailed it in the show. I think that if you're going to try to experience the story, I would just go for the show. Not to say that the book isn't worth it, it's just a fact that you're going to get more out of it when you watch the show. There's more of a developed plot, and there's more characters, and usually I think when people hear that, they think, oh, they're just trying to fill it in to make it longer, you know, like The Hobbit and stuff like that, but they did a really good job in the show. I think they did a really good job in the show. All the plots were just as interesting as the main plot, and they tied in very well. I don't think anything felt out of place. Okay, the next section is about general book structures, if you know it's about that. Throughout the build-up of the book, throughout the beginning half of the book, the whole end goal seems to be that Joe and Beck are gonna have sex. That seems like what this whole thing is going towards. That's his main goal from the start, that's his driving factor, and that event kind of happens right in the middle. And so after that, we sort of don't feel like we have a direction. I didn't feel like I had a direction while I was reading. Everything after that kind of just felt like it was unpredictable. That sounds weird to say that unpredictability is a con. It's just that it felt more willy-nilly. That's even a better word. Unpredictable can still have a direction you're heading, and each character can still have goals in mind. Willy-nilly is where the characters lose their goals, and now there's still half the book left. What is it going to write about? And so during that period there, before the plot kind of picks up again, I mean, you never really get direction. I guess the direction is that Beck is going to find out, right? That's the direction it's going to go. But since you're in Joe's head, that doesn't even seem like a possibility because he's so certain that there's no way. And it really feels like there's no way because he gets away with everything, right? It makes sense that Beck was going to find out. I'm not saying that it's not predictable. I'm saying that there's no way that it was hinted at. There's no way that was foreshadowed. That's not a good or bad thing. That's just a way that this, I guess maybe it should be in the emotion section because this is kind of how it made me feel. Joe is so good at what he does, and Beck is so oblivious that it doesn't feel like that's somewhere where the book would go, where that she would find out. It feels like the book goes to them having sex, and then it happens, and then we don't know where to go after that. We don't have much motivation after that to keep reading, because the thing that we were waiting to happen with the characters happened. The other thing that I found kind of strange that I think maybe was just forgotten about is that Curtis, the other bookstore clerk, before Ethan was hired, apparently Joe saw by the running shoes that he got mugged by Curtis, but they just dropped that completely. Never mentioned again after it happens. I don't think that would have been done intentionally. You could say that Joe didn't want to follow up with police or anything like that because he doesn't want police attention on himself because he's a murderer, right? He's a criminal, or he intends to murder. But at least that could be said, right? At least there could be a moment where he goes, shit, I want my stuff back. Then he got, well, there's no talking to the police for me or something like that, right? Because if you don't mention it, it feels like it's just forgotten about, and he just picks up his, heals from his wounds, and nothing after that. He's never worried to see Curtis again. We never kind of investigate Curtis's motivation. His motivation seems just to be like, he got fired. I guess that's a motivation. He got fired, he wanted to get back at him. So wouldn't he want to go after Curtis just to, settle it? I guess not. Don't want more trouble. But how do you know that Curtis isn't going to come back? It was just strange to be forgotten about, and I didn't like that. The constant references to other classic books in this novel went kind of over my head, most of them. I don't know what most of the titles are. I have read some classics, but not any really of the ones that he mentioned. Well, maybe a few of them, but nothing really notable. But that didn't really take away from anything. I feel like I could have gotten more out of it from that if I understood that. Obviously, I think the author understands some classics. So part 5 is, oh, sorry, that was part 4 of my general notes. That was the only note. So I guess I'll just put that part of book notes, never mind. And part 5 is my rating. So I rate this book 4 out of 5 stars. It definitely did not blow me away. The whole time I was comparing it to the show, and I always felt like the show was better. But I definitely thought this was a page turner. I read this in a few days, which is very fast for me. And I felt like there were some small pacing problems. You know, halfway through we sort of lost direction, so the whole arc kind of lost a little bit of footing there. Joe is a great character. It was an enjoyable book. Honestly, it's leaning on 3.5 stars, but I'm going to give it 4. One of the biggest reasons that it's not a 5 out of 5 is just I really feel like the show did it better. But yeah, let me know down below what you thought of the book and how it compared to the show, if you watched the show or read the book. As for season 2, just quickly let me talk about it. I really love season 2. I think they did a great job. Love and Joe, I think they're perfect together. I really did not like at the end how he went over after a different girl. That new girl has to have something incredible with Joe to convince me that they're a better match than Joe and Love. I understand it would be really cool if they could set it up and it's like, after all this time, he sees her through the fence, and that's the girl that he's gonna, that's perfect for him. And he had to go through all this to find her. And I could go on about this for a long time. He'll never be satisfied. He'll always go after a different girl. But you know what? Let's say he finds this girl and he settles with her instead of Love. That is gonna take a lot to convince me that that's the right decision. I really like Joe and Love. I love how they're both murderers. I love how they work together. And in season 2 of the show, they completely veered off from season 1. You basically don't even have to watch season 1 to understand season 2. I think you could very well watch season 2 and not have watched season 1. Maybe some of the Beck flashbacks won't make a lot of sense. But other than that, the whole story fits into season 2, and it's really good. They did a really good job. I think a lot of times when you hear that where they veered off, it's not so good, but I think they did a great job here. Thank you everybody for watching. See you guys in the next video sometime.